Good morning, kiddos. It is Mr. B, and it is Monday, March the 15th, and this is the how-to lecture for the art this week. And this week's art is our third week in trimester 3, and we are covering in our heptatonic modes, our 7-step modes, 8-note modes, from where the word octave comes from. We are covering what's called the Dorian mode. And the Dorian mode is D minor. From Chicago, we often say things like D's, Dems, and Do's. We don't pronounce the. This is definitely D minor. It is really exemplified here in our performance this week by a segment from So What by Miles Davis, and you'll have that reference in our Canvas materials. This is specifically about going over the art and what you will be drawing today. Here is an image of what the final product will look like. There will also be a static image at Canvas for you to see, but the expectation is not that you're just copying it, it is that you are writing it down as I'm presenting it to you this way, so that you are getting the full lecture. That's what this is. This is really a graphic organizer, even though we're calling it art. Okay, so the top of things this week, and we need some ability here for the machine to focus. We'll have it locked in there. There we go. Alright, so now that we are focus locked, and at the top here, we're going to write T3, trimester 3, week 3, art. I'm going to try to make this one a little neater than my last one. And then we are calling this is called the Dorian mode. And I am saying that it is the minor. It is the minor, really, to know. Now, in terms of our heptatonic mode, hepta meaning 7, the pattern that we ultimately are looking at here is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step. That's our pattern. And what you notice here is here would be where our notes would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is what is referred to as our tonic, or our 1. We'll call that the T1, which would be our first octave. And when we focus on the structure of these modes as scales, we think about them in terms of the root, which is called the 1 or the tonic, where the 3 is, and where the 5 is. And one of the things you're going to notice, if you pay attention, is that this 5, which is also sometimes in our solfege called sol, it generally doesn't change. It stays, that 5 doesn't move. As a concept, it moves as a note, but the pattern of the 5 sort of being left alone and never being altered, raised or lowered, is relevant. Now you can see that this has a W in the middle. It's the same forward and back. So in language terms, this would be what's referred to as a palindrome. It's the same forward and back. What it really means in terms of music is it's this cool thing called intervallic symmetry. That's what it's really called. For us, musically, it's called intervallic symmetry, and it's really cool. And it's why it has a more even kind of sound to it, because it ends on the same note, and the steps are sort of the same. Now, a thing that I want to start including in terms of the work that we're going to do for the balance of the year is this interval key, and legend. So up at the top, we're writing here interval, key, no, legend. Now I could have called it the key, and that would have been confusing. I'm doing the drawing a little bit differently this time. When we're talking about those things, though, we're talking about the half-step relationships, half steps, and again we're emphasizing this 1, 3, 5 concept. So it's this 1, 3, 5 concept. And then what we're focusing on is the names for these modes or scales are often given names based on what the distance is between this relationship, the 1, 3, and the 3, 5. And they give them characters and traits and qualities. And those names are augmented, which sometimes you'll just see as aug. They are major, and I'm capitalizing those two for a reason. Then minor, and then last, which likes to get ignored but shouldn't be, is diminished. And you want to keep that bubbly little dot there. Now, augmented means, I'm going to make my little drawing here kind of conveniently reshaped. That, my friends, is called planning. All right. What you have in augmented is a relationship of 4, 4. Major, you have a 4, 3. Those are not bubbles. Minor, you have a 3, 4, and diminished, you have a 3, 3. And this week, what we're seeing is a minor relationship. We're seeing that the whole and half step combine. Remember, a whole step is 3 half steps, or 2 half steps. So we get 1, 2, 3 half steps. And then 2 whole steps is 4 half steps. That's 3, 4. So that's why this is a minor mode. And again, in the context of everything, this is 8 notes. And remember, when we have 8 notes, don't do that. Just go like this. Go notes. And then say octave. You kind of do a little infinity symbol, but it's really an 8. So 8 notes, octave. Okay. And then the other thing to remember is that, yeah, we've got 8 notes, but this is also, again, what's referred to as a heptatonic mode. That means there's 7 steps to the root tone. 7 steps to the root tone. Again, we should draw here. Get stuff there. Draw here. Here we have 3 half steps. Here we have 4 half steps. Okay? There we go. And again, generally, the 5, the perfect fifth, does not move, generally. Moves as a note, but generally not as a concept. And that has, again, something to do with its mathiness falling out of the vibrations of strings and tubes. Because that distance there on a string, that distance, were one to draw it out on a ruler even, one would find that the, here we go, the third, the perfect third of a string is the fifth. And even if I take something like a boom whacker as a tube, if I strike it here at the perfect third, I get an overtone. So even though this is G sharp, okay, even though it's G sharp, if I play it at exactly 1/3, I get the overtone, or the fifth above a G sharp. And some of you may actually know how to calculate what that would be. The fifth above a G sharp. Let's see what that would be. Anyway, so here is our pitch class space wheel. And again, this time, instead of pitch class, we're really focused on intervallic class, or interval class. And so we're going to label this as our P1. You could also consider that a T1, perfect eighth, tonic. Okay. And then continuing to beat this to us, that we continue these labelings. Little means minor, big means major, major third. And again, these are conventional terms. Perfect fourth, the tritone, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh. Okay. And what's really cool about the Dorian mode in general is that it is, again, symmetrical. It has a symmetry to it. And symmetry, just like us, we humans, we have bilateral symmetry in our bodies. We have two eyes, two ears, one mouth, fortunately. In this case, we have one mouth, which is our tonal center, our tonic that we're returning to. But then otherwise we have symmetry in the body here. You can literally see it. And it does come through in terms of the way this mode sounds, regardless of what key you play it in. Now it naturally forms itself from D, as we learned a few weeks ago in playing Lean on Me. This would be the second of the two modes, of the 7 modes. Second of the 7 modes. And what I'm doing here is I am making solid the 1, the 3, and the 5, but I'm also putting some attention over here to the 6 because I want you to see it. Okay, I want you to see it. We're going to talk about why it's important here in just a minute. And then you're going to put so what? And I like to embellish it with an exclamation point and a question mark. And that is by Miles Davis. Miles Davis. And then your art here is art by, it's me. Yours will be by you. And then you're going to write your period. I'm just writing period 5 because it's the perfect fifth. No, you're all the same. You're all wonderful. Anyway, so here, Dorian. Now, what I want you to notice here is that this is what makes it Dorian. It is this major sixth. Now, there is another pattern that uses this exact same format and that uses this minor sixth here. And that minor sixth, when you use it in that shape, if you were to, and I'm doing these lines very faintly because I don't want them to overtake the drawing, but if I were to do this in terms of the shape, make this the half step and this the whole step here, that is in fact what is referred to as the Aeolian mode. It is also referred to as the natural minor. This is the traditional minor. The Aeolian, so that's the shape of the regular minor. But Miles's Dorian mode is a much more interesting, and there's other types of minors, certainly. Again, minor simply meaning that the first jump between the 1 and the 3, and again, these are in the context of a scale and the values within a scale. Okay, this is in this case is considered a minor third, which is why the mode itself is considered minor. Is this minor third right here is what we're talking about. Right here. Now this adds an additional minor flavor to it. Okay? But by bringing it into this major over here, it creates this symmetry, and that gives it more of a major sounding, or a more harmonic, less dissonant, more round sounding kind of a thing. All right. And then continue on with our artwork. Now, this week, we're drawing a grand staff down here. So we're going to need a total of 11 lines. That's kind of a silent line. A placeholder for our middle C. Okay, there we go. Now we got a nice grid to work on. And so, first thing we're going to do is we're going to cap this thing off on both ends. This end, and we are ending up here. We have really just 2 measures to fill. They're big measures to fill, but we have 2 measures to fill. And the way we play this week is going to have some repetition to it. So right away over here, we need to get these 2 little chunks nice and bold. Put a little thin line in front of them. And then about our middle line, a different note in each case, in each clef. We're going to put that little repeat symbol. And then over here, we're going to make sure that we indicate that this is the grand staff with that little bump there where the middle C would be. And again, this is our middle C on the iPad. That's C3 on the iPad. Okay. And then this week, we have our quarter note, and our tempo is 147 beats per minute. Let's make sure that's a quarter note, not an eighth with a funky flag. And I want to give us, I didn't draw it perfectly here, but I'm just going to kind of make the general note here that what we're doing this week in terms of repetition, there's 4 times that we're doing it. And just a note for you, it's 4 times in 4/4 time, which is also called common time, which can sometimes be represented by a C. I'm going to draw that this week. Now, my drawing is a little bit congested here. Yours can be too. But there is our treble clef, focusing on our G there. And then our bass clef down here, focusing on our F, staying within the clef, coming around, and again defining that F with the little dots. Again, F, G, A, B, C. F, G, A, B, C. All right. This week we get to see all 4 kinds of rests, which is interesting. But before we do that, we have to draw our repetition symbols. In dark first. Ideally, these should be lined up. And our little. So we know we're repeating this. I'm going to repeat this pattern 4 times. Now, in the treble part, the first measure is very complicated. Sarcastic. That is a whole rest. And note that the whole rest is upside down. It falls down. So heavy it comes down. A half rest is more like a top hat. Half rest. And that's into our second measure. Now down here, we're going to start off things with a quick eighth rest. That's what that looks like. And later on over here, we are going to add what's called a quarter rest. So I'm going to draw it in with you now. So we're going to draw it in now, because we're going to anticipate where it's going to be. And it looks like this. It's like a funky lightning bolt Z with a C on it. It's a funky deal. Alright. So those are all the rests that we're going to use today. It's like a rest stop. No, it's not. Alright. Now we're going to draw some quarter notes. So let's get our quarter note, a quarter note right here. And it's a dotted quarter note, which means we're going to play a little bit long. And that note just happens to be an E. And then we're going to play that E 2 more times. We're going to play it together, tied together, as eighth notes. And just in our solfege, that those are also referred to as Mi. And then we're going to come in here with a D, and an A, and again, I'm trying that a little bit big, little SpongeBobby, but it'll work. And that is a Re, and that is a La. Again, this is an eighth rest. This is a quarter rest. Okay. And then the real fun of this week's work is in playing our chords. And when we play these chords, we have a bass clef again and a treble clef, but middle C gets to come into the game. Middle C gets to play here. And we play the treble clef first in terms of our performance. So we're going to draw it first. And in both cases, we have a C, a middle C. In the first pattern, we're playing a G and a B after, in addition to the C. So there's our G and there's our B. So we're playing a C, a G, and a B. Now all of these, we draw them all together, and they're held a little bit. They're dotted quarter notes. They have an extended value. Okay. And then this pattern over here, we're going to play a C, F, and an A. Notice that the C is staying constant, and that we're changing our pattern from GB to FA. And going from GB to FA, we are stepping down. And this is a combined eighth note in terms of its performance. Now, here in the bass clef, we are playing the EA and we're playing the DG. And again, those are stepping down in a similar manner. All right? So we're starting up here on the top line. And then this bass. And again, these are dotted quarter notes, which means they are played longer in their value. And then to make up for that, in a sense, mathematically, these are then eighth notes. So instead of two quarter notes, we're hanging out over here a little bit longer and then delaying this, so we're showing that mathematically. And then here is our 8th note. And then that is the art. Now the way this falls out in terms of your rubric, this is 25% of your grade, 25% of your grade, 25% of your grade, 25% of your grade. So this week's art is worth 100 points. Again, the performance this week is worth 300. So make sure you pay attention to this week's performance as well. So there is the finished artwork for T3WK3, the Dorian mode. Thank you.